Wednesday, September the 15th. And we begin with the old business, which is the minutes from the August 25th meeting.
Motion to approve, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved and approved, moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the last meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we're going to discuss the rules and procedures draft. We got that draft a couple of weeks ago, I think, almost a week and a half ago or so. And so I'm assuming that you had an opportunity to look at that draft. So we can look at it maybe page by page to see if you have comments on it. Well, on the first, it's page 2. We have our first change, which is it's about a vacancy. It's 3. It's chair and vice chair. Section 3, letter D. We're taking. Let's see. If a vacancy occurs in the office of the council, vice chair, the remaining councilors will elect one of their own to serve. And yes, yeah, that would be proper. Got to change that, because as the charter reads right now, I know there's a charter amendment out there, but as it is right now, the chair is actually elected by the county. So it's countywide election. Any comment on that? Are you okay with that?
I am, but I'm wanting to know why the balance of the unexpected term has been removed, because that does give some specificity to it.
So just a couple quick things. So this was capturing conversation that we had in February, which was a long time ago. And my guess is for the vice chair, because there isn't a specified term now. And so at any time, the council can, I would assume, appoint a second or a different vice chair. So there's not a defined term for a vice chair.
But don't we, it isn't, well, I should be reading this. I didn't think about this, but do the rules indicate that on a yearly basis, a vice chair is selected on the first meeting of January, that a vice chair is selected? I believe it is. So that would be it doesn't state that it is a year. That's number 1. It's number A under section 3. A councilor elected countywide will be chair.
Just to clarify on the vice chair issue, the charter requires that the council shall annually elect one of its members to serve as vice chair.
Okay. So maybe, yeah,
sure.
Maybe we should leave the term in there then. So let's leave that particular portion in there that is currently out. Does that meet with your approval, council?
Although Kathleen's correct, there's not an official term. So, you know, there's nothing that says they have to be elected on a calendar basis or anything. So it is clunky and a bit difficult. I mean, both Councillor Bowerman and Kathleen, they're valid. I think you could take the language out, and what it would be is that they would elect to serve until the next election. And so you'd have the balance of the unexpired term, but there's not an official term per se. And Kathleen's correct. The charter certainly says that the council has to annually elect one of its members, but the council can elect a vice chair more frequently than that. The charter just sets that minimum of annually.
What's your pleasure, council? What would you like to do about it then?
Councillor Bowerman, you're muted.
You couldn't hear a word I said, could you? Sorry, it was brilliant. I said I would like to see something in there just for specificity. So the balance of the unexpired term, I've got no problem with that, or the balance of the time until the next election, or something to that effect. The next annual election would be fine.
I would agree with that. Unless the term could be used. If not, then the balance of however that could be worded, but I think it should be specified.
Mhm.
There's not a question. If the vice chair is gone, then we elect somebody else that will serve until the next annual election of
Yeah,
chair.
that's good. Otherwise, sure as everything, it'll come up and there'll be a question and it won't be answered in the rules.
So can we say the shall serve until the next election of the next annual election of the vice chair?
Yes,
Okay.
annual election.
Mhm. Okay. Let's do that. Okay, moving on to page 3, nothing, unless you have anything to add. Well, well, that was changed earlier. They changed from the board to council. And we also have special meetings. Was that changed earlier, Kathleen, maybe? Because it's not in red, it was.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, the ones that are in red were the ones that were changed this year. The other edits
Okay.
were from the prior time.
Okay. Any comments on those? I guess they've been changed, so we just note that they have been changed. Page 4, we have another proposed change. Which is letter D. Section 7, letter D. Except as provided in section 8.2 of the county charter, which is this regular meeting.
I know Lindsay has it up. I'm going to pull up the charter, but I believe this was, there's specific language in the charter regarding ordinances and the chair putting items on the agenda.
Okay. Okay, is there any problem with that, councilors?
Doesn't restrict the chair's authority, does it? What's in 8.2?
Oh, it's just for clarification to ensure that there isn't a question of, but wait, the rules say,
What?
and the charter says this, but the charter supersedes, so it's just for clarification.
Right, I understand that, but I don't know what 8.2 says.
It says proposed ordinances may be introduced by any council member or mini initiative. Every proposed ordinance shall be introduced in its entirety in writing. Brief summaries of proposed ordinances shall be published before consideration. The council shall hold at least one public hearing after due notice to consider the proposed ordinance. A proposed ordinance may be amended by motion at hearing without publication, provided the amendments do not change the scope and object of the proposed ordinance. Final passage of the council requires a roll call vote with a minimum of 3 affirmed votes required for adoption. And ordinances or summaries of them shall be published after enactment, except as otherwise provided by the charter. Ordinance shall take effect 10 days after enactment or at a date later if stated in the ordinance.
Well, yeah, that sounds fine.
Yeah, so I think this was just acknowledging, because this section in the rules of procedure is about agendas and regular meetings and council meetings. So I think it was just acknowledging that council does have the ability to put on ordinance on agendas, because most agendas I coordinate with the staff.
Just a question. Are we talking about both council meetings and council time here?
Of course, if you're putting an ordinance on council time, it would just be for discussion, not passage.
And that's due to a hearing that would be required, and the hearings are done during council meetings.
Ordinances, though, it's resolutions or staff reports also.
So it looks like
So yeah, this one covers all meetings,
In
but I can
meetings,
tell you
yeah.
because it does talk about counselors, two counselors need to be in agreement to put something on a council time. Ordinances always, like Lindsay said, other than discussion would be at a council meeting. So this is encompassing all of the agendas that we do in that
And
paragraph.
Kathleen, where does it mention council time? What letter?
Kathleen, this is Taylor. Doesn't this refer to all regular meetings, which would include council time and the Tuesday meetings?
Well, it may, but A starts out at Tuesday, Clark County Council meeting agenda, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know.
I think I was remembering the prior language on C. That's why.
Yeah, I don't see in my look right now where it calls out council time. I mean, the sections afterwards call it work sessions, executive sessions separately. The title does encompass agenda, conduct of regular meetings, and special council hearings. And you are correct, Councilor Bowerman, that the Tuesday, that's a council meeting.
So just for clarity, why not wherever we want to start specifying that the letters apply to both, that we specify that?
We can do that because even like on C, you can see that agendas for Tuesday's meetings will be posted. So we
Right.
can specify the type of meeting on all of them. That's
Yeah, and or maybe it could just be a caveat applying to all the below, because like with B, we would want the county manager to review the council time agenda too, correct? So it might apply to everything after A.
I can draft some language that will incorporate what is the distinguish, whether it's all encompassing of the two or separate them out based on the type of meeting,
Thank you.
of course. Are we ready to move to the next page?
Sorry, I was taking notes. So next page.
So this, the executive session was updated based on the conversation to include the RCW of executive session and outlines the agenda and what some of those topics could be in executive session.
Looks good to
Any
me.
issue with that?
Nope.
Yeah, looks fine. Gary, any comment? You're muted.
I'm very appreciative of the work that's gone into this and supportive of these changes. I want to, so I am supportive of all of this. I want to get to a further discussion on what I think is missing.
Yes, but we'll just quickly go through the others then too, so we have it taken care of.
Any questions on the minutes section?
No,
Are we
and none on
ready
page 7
to-
either.
Okay, page 6 didn't have any updates. Page 7, that's just something I was taught many years ago. So it's just a personal preference to type out the number.
I see.
Sorry.
Okay,
That
I
wasn't just,
accept it.
I was taught the same thing.
And put in parentheses the number,
Yeah.
right,
so it's fully understood.
right.
Okay.
Page
And we
8,
didn't go to the same school.
it was a very good attorney that taught me that. But,
Okay.
okay, so this on this page on the top under the vacancy and county manager, the change was that when the county manager position is vacant, that the council will appoint an interim. So before it was the deputy county manager.
Oh,
Interim. So
okay.
this provides options for the council if you want to appoint a different staff member or go outside for an interim, like the council's done in the past. So it's to give some flexibility to the council. Counselor conduct below, and we'll get to this section. I did split out code of conduct. And if I would, we'll get there, but I changed that title to code of professional conduct. And so if that is something that the council is interested in, I have a note in mind to change that title. And then code of ethical conduct is on there as well. And I can provide some other information when we get to that section if the council.
Okay, so, but I did find a typo on, is this 7B? And we could use that same use of typing out 50, FIFTY. It's 50, not SO miles. That's what mine reads.
Yeah, my guess is that this was converted from a PDF to a Word document. and
Oh, I see,
spot
okay.
Turns into S's, but
I
thank you.
see, okay.
Oh,
All right.
Yes, we will.
But
we'll
if we
update
can add the 50.
good catch.
What?
Okay, I think that's all the changes in the main, and then we can go down to the exhibit. And this is where we had the code of ethical conduct. And so if I can, before council's discussion, just want to point out a couple of things. So in this initial draft, what I did is I split out code of ethical conduct and code of professional conduct and split the verbiage into two. One thing that I would recommend to the council for your consideration is maybe with the code of ethical conduct, and you can certainly keep it how it is now. There is a highlighted spot of who, if there was an ethical complaint submitted, who would actually do the review. And so that part has not been filled in, but something the council might want to consider is calling out the RCW that actually talks about ethical conduct rather than having something separate in here, because I know just like with staff and people I've communicated with, sometimes there's confusion between ethical conduct and unprofessional conduct. And ethical conduct really is governed by statute and what that means as an elected official of using positions for personal gain or like a contract and stuff. So there are specific instances of ethics in government that's outlined by statute. So that might be something you want to consider in that section, is just referencing the RCW so that community members who are concerned regarding ethical conduct can go to the statute and see what that means on that part, and then maybe keep in the professional conduct, because I think there's a confusion between
Mhm.
ethics and professionalism. So
I think that is excellent. And having just the RCW language, it's more detailed and thorough than what is here. That's all good. Let's do it.
And so you're talking about eliminating everything else but the reference to the RCW. Is that correct?
I am, yeah.
Yes. How about you, Gary? You think that's?
Yeah, so I want to give some additional comment here, and
Okay.
what I was referencing before, I do want to talk about a whole different area, but it's related to this area in that I'm not real clear on what we can do with internal rules versus needing a charter amendment. And obviously, this topic is being addressed by the Charter Review Commission to a certain extent. And the gap regarding work hours and unexcused absences, that's a huge gap that we have. And I personally feel it could be, but I don't have a legal basis for it, agreed upon by us to self-regulate what we do. So I guess my first question is, or my first comment is, I agree with what the manager just stated, and would add there's an additional component. You know, people confuse what's professional and unprofessional, ethics versus code of conduct, but they also confuse, and we saw it in earnest in the blow up a year and a half ago, where it's just divisiveness, a disagreement with something. It has nothing to do with professional or unprofessional code of conduct or even ethics, but the viewer, the constituent, just simply disagrees with what's said from the podium and then makes a complaint about it. So, I mean, this is important that we do. I just want to make sure it doesn't take a charter amendment, as maybe just we've had some minor discussion about the area of absences, maybe or incapacity as well, maybe needing a charter amendment. So I'm really not clear, Taylor, on where that dividing line is on self-regulation, what we can put into rules ourselves versus having to amend the charter.
Thank you, Counselor. That's certainly an area that we can research for the council. I think that the current rules of procedure are consistent with the current charter. I don't have the proposed charter amendment up in front of me, but certainly were that to pass, that would likely impact and trump the rules of procedure as they're set forth here or in an ordinance like this. We can certainly look at specific questions the council has in terms of whether a charter amendment is required or whether it can be accomplished in the rules of procedure. But in general, I guess that's all I'd like to say for right now, but that's certainly something we can work on.
Okay, so
Meanwhile, there
Go
isn't
ahead.
any problem with putting in the reference to the state law here, is there?
Yeah, I'm all for that. We need
Yeah.
specificity to areas that are already regulated by state law.
Yeah.
Is that a really long RCW? I know we can reference it, but it may even help to have some of the verbiage or the verbiage from any specific RCW. However, it shouldn't be super, super long. But when somebody looks at these rules and procedures so that they don't have to look it up, it might be helpful. So it, cogitates in their mind really what ethics is.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we can include something like we did with executive session language, which is, RCW, the ethics is 4223, defines ethics, and it may include items, but not limited to, and list out examples of what it is. So we can certainly summarize that.
Good. I think that would be really good. Not just put a number of RCW. So thank you. Okay,
Particularly that definition of ethical conduct, since we get into some different kind of thing in a minute, and they're not going to always know the difference. Yeah.
okay, so then, so I think we have that portion taken care of, so we'll move to page number 13, where it's Code of Professional Conduct Principles. I guess we could start, let's see, these, there aren't,
So I can clarify on
okay,
this one for you.
thank you.
The only, let's see, I think we need to go down. I gotta make sure I'm on the right page. Okay. Code of professional conduct. Okay. So there wasn't any changes except for in the last section, which is violations. The parts that you can see here, the numbers had changed, the title had changed. The deletions down here really was the ethics. So that was actually pulled out to put under ethics. So staff, if you could actually scroll down, Kristen. So this was the only verbiage that has been updated, and it's regarding if there is an allegation or violation of the Code of Professional Conduct. So that language on the bottom that states if a violation of the code of, and I would add professional conduct there as well, because I didn't put the professional, is alleged, the council should listen to the concern, review the information, and determine any actions should be, if any action should be taken. Council action may include, but are not limited to, reviewing the code of conduct, public admonishment, or public resolution of censure with removal of the violator from all committees on which the person is representing the county. So that was the only change in that area, other than pulling out the specific ethical issues.
Okay, so then I would like to propose beginning a little bit of a discussion, and I think it may fit either it could be a separate section, or it could be under number 4 or 3. Number 3, counselors should strive for excellence and continuous learning relative to personal development and all operations of the county government. Not sure it fully fits there, but I would like to, if it doesn't, we need another section that would address attendance.
And so can you scroll back down just a little bit so we can see which area that the chair is talking about on the previous page?
Yeah, it would be section.
Right there. Thank you.
Let's go to that page 13. Yeah. So we have had an issue. We had just recently an issue with having to cancel a couple of meetings because we did not have a quorum. There was no notice to me as a council chair that somebody was going to be absent, that a second person was going to be absent. So, you know, in finding that out at nearly the last minute, we had to cancel 2 meetings because there was not a quorum. Therefore, I believe it's incumbent upon us to create some sort of professional conduct rule that if the consequences are as stated in, you know, for violations of professional conduct, it looks like, Taylor, I'll just ask, you know, propose this, and you can say if you don't believe that would be acceptable or legal. You know, we're saying that these violations could result in, and these have been the rules and procedures existing, that it would be a public admonishment or public resolution or censure with removal of the violator from the committee on which the person is representing the county. That's for right now. If there is a county charter amendment necessary to actually take action, you know, more severe action, then, you know, then we need a county charter amendment for that. However, I'm thinking that because we have these other other violations and then state what the resulting consequences would be. Would that not be acceptable as a consequence, at least at this point, Taylor?
The resulting consequence being a potential censure from the council. I think the council is free to set expectations that it has for itself in its rules of procedure and to outline what those expectations are. And certainly the council has the authority to admonish one another if there's a violation of the rules. I do want to point out, I just come across the statute that I would refer to the council to. I will refer to the council to soon, that appears to discuss potential for the county legislative authority to bring an action in Superior Court for abandonment of the responsibilities of a county elected official, for a period of not more than, where it's been abandoned for a period of 30 days for failing to perform official duties. That statute may be something the council is interested in looking at. I'll circulate that. But again, I wanted to let you know about that because I just came across it. It was someplace other than where I thought it was going to be.
Yep.
It does not.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
The consequence of that statute appears to be the denial of compensation for the period of abandonment. That is appears to be the extent of the consequence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so thanks for finding that, Taylor, as well as the Pierce County example of a charter amendment that includes some of what we're discussing here today. I think it would be helpful that we did have internal rules. Even it would bolster if we had to go to Superior Court and say, hey, we want to sanction this counselor for not having participated and because they violated our own work rules. I want to make a couple of quick points because I think they're important here, because this is a huge gap that I'm really surprised that we have. I wish that we had identified it in the Charter Review Committee because it's that important. The public has a right to transparency, to know who's coming to work and who's not, who's being paid on tax with taxpayer dollars. And so I feel like there isn't transparency right now with our own council. The chair has mentioned that we've had to cancel some meetings because of a lack of quorum. I have seen a huge trend since this new year, since January, of counselors just simply not showing up for a month at a time with no advance notice. The public has a right to know who's skipping work and who's not. I mean, we have only 3 of us, once again, on this meeting, and we've had quite a few of those. So internal rules to solidify a process so the chair and the county manager can count on attendance at meetings. I mean, we all belong to a lot of committees. Many of them require you to get an approved absence from the committee. You can't just not show up because it is an obstruction to getting the county's work done if you can't count on having a quorum. People have certainly illnesses that pop up, vacation time, other conflicts. They should all be approved by the chair or at least have notice of it. I think the public would demand that, you not take the equivalent of a couple months of vacation on the taxpayer's dole every year with just on a whim. And we're kind of seeing that right now. We have no explanation for why certain counselors just don't show up. I think we need to police our own. There are many examples, and I discussed with what we had with the judiciary in California, where the presiding judge would have control over running basically the business of the court. In this case, it would be the chair running the business of the council. I think we need those rules. Even if there are no, if it doesn't amount to a charter amendment, so we can't have a sanction, I think it still amounts to having transparency with the public, the voting public. You know, they would want to know in the next election, well, geez, that counselor only comes to work a few times a year or a few times a week or a few times every few months. You know, that public needs to know this. And so we need rules to be able to point to that deficit in this, what seems to be a growing and problematic trend with some of our counselors.
I
Yeah, go
certainly,
ahead, Karen.
I certainly concur with that, and would like to go to that Pierce County example that you provided, because that might be a good place to start. One of the things that I would like to see is that what is excused by the chair is itemized specifically. The reason for that is that some chairs are stronger than others. Some chairs would excuse anything and everything. And I think that is not where we want to go. So maybe we could have a specific list, like illness of the counselor, bereavement of immediate family members, and maybe nothing else. That's what kind of comes to my mind. But the sanctions that you mentioned, Taylor, I think are really important. And maybe we could get to that at our next meeting, because apparently, I think we don't have it to look at right now, but I think those are very important to look at and add. And, one of the things that you hear people in the community say is, oh, well, this is not a big deal. Voters can take care of this problem. They really can't. And here's why. Number one, they honestly don't know about the absences of their counselor or others, for that matter, or probably the only one they'd know about is the chair, because that's kind of apparent when somebody is sitting in his or her spot. But they don't know. And furthermore, that's every 4 years. We've got 4 years of every person's term to deal with, and we need to be able to have regular meetings that we can count on in that period.
I would agree with all that you've said. So it was interesting to see what Pierce County has done. And I think if we were to do that, of course, it would have to be a charter amendment. However, our own rules to police ourselves should make some of these statements. So I guess some of the say again, Councilor Bowerman, what you were saying would be an excused absence.
Illness of the counselor and bereavement of an immediate family member.
I will note, just for discussion, that just from a drafting standpoint of these sorts of things, typically there may end up being a type of catch-all language that's included in there, because you can start, and I'm sure Taylor's mind is going there, our attorney brains think of all of these things. For example, my husband's in a car accident. That's not going to be bereavement of a family member or illness of the counselor, but I think that there would be a consensus that if an immediate family member is in the hospital, that would also qualify. So you can think of all of these types of examples. And so I would encourage, just from a drafting standpoint, to not limit yourself so narrowly that you may end up having unintended consequences, but instead allowing for some degree of discretion and a catch-all of something, to the extent of it's up to the discretion of the chair, including but not limited to illness of the counselor, or bereavement of an immediate family member, to give a sense of the types of things that would be allowable, but at the same point not be an exhaustive list.
Yeah, that's not a bad point. I think that's good. We just don't want to open it up for the weak chair to be able to be approving everything that comes forward, or nothing. If nothing comes forward, that's not acceptable as an excuse either,
Right.
or an after the fact. Oh, you didn't know that I had XYZ. No, it needs to be in advance.
It's right, like, personal, I'm going to take personal leave for a month. Oh, personal business. Well, we can't just say personal business. We need to know, is this really emergent or, so anyway, the other thing that I would say is maybe even in our rules, we could suggest some number of absences. I mean, here, in this Pierce County is a council member's absence from 3 consecutive regular meetings of a council without being excused by the council. I would suggest if there were 3 out of 6 meetings missed, that would be, that would be a breaking of the rule, something like that. We have council time, and we should say meetings, because we've got council time, we've got council hearings, we've got work sessions, we have all these meetings, and our council time, we have every week, except for the 2 weeks that we took off. We have council time unless there just is nothing that we need to discuss. There probably have been some times when we didn't meet for council time, but that's a weekly meeting. And so, I would throw that out there too, that maybe we should also have some limit. Here's the catch-22 here. If this person who is absent consistently then is relieved of their committee duties, they're going to be happy. That's my thought. Although the embarrassment of having been released from those committees to represent the council, the county council is, that should be an embarrassment. However, it's really lackadaisical. It's not going to really matter that much to them that they don't have to go to the committee meetings,
I want
unfortunately.
to highlight one other point and kind of give an anecdote as well that's related. So I was kind of surprised by some of the emails regarding the lack of existing law for even incapacity. I mean, the continuance of government issue, basically, I guess right now is only covered if someone actually is dead, if they're on life support or had a stroke and brain dead, they're not incapacitated by state law. So it does sound like there needs to be a charter amendment. And certainly, in numerous number of instances where either through illness or lack of reasonable absences, I mean, it can get to the point where they're really no better than incapacitated as a counselor. So, I think we need to look at these issues. And the anecdote I want to give is this, coming from a former occupation, where the local paper, very similar to the Columbian, made a public records request of our local judicial branch. And they wanted to know who's at work and who's not, who's taking vacation and who's not, who's taking leaves of absence, medical or otherwise. And I will tell you, all of the judges, I was not one of them, but all of the judges who had been taking excessive time away from work threw a fit. They went panicky because it is an elected office, and they were afraid of what the article was going to show once it hit the press. That's the transparency I'm talking about.
Mhm.
I had a lot of military absences that were, under order. So I felt like I was kind of okay. The fact that I was serving my country and away from work with my other occupation. But it is something to think about. And we have a huge gap in our rules, in our bylaws, or our charter, rather. I think we need to address it. And I know Lindsay is fully capable of coming up with some great language, whether borrowing from Pierce or otherwise adding to it to cover this issue.
One other factor to add in there is the 30-day reference that is done, I think, in Pierce and maybe in our RFWs, I'm not sure. How do we count to 30 in Clark County? Here is the question. Does every, you know where I'm going with this. Does every
There are
council
28
time-
days in February.
Does every council time meeting count and only every council meeting? Or is it also Monday, Thursday, and Friday? And I would claim that in that 30 days, it's the 5-day week, because there are other things that go on when the person does not participate, when they're out for a week. So, and I can vouch for that actually as having already occurred, where there are other meetings that are scheduled that are where that person is representing the council, and they don't attend because they're on vacation. So I think the 5-day week is what we're talking about when we count 30 days.
Well, that would mean more than a month then. 5 times 4 is 20.
Well, or you could say,
A month and a half.
we don't have to stick with 30 days either. It could be, if we're talking about 4 weeks, it could be 20
Well,
work.
maybe so with that in mind, what about the idea of missing 3 out of 6 meetings? And then include committee meetings upon which a counselor represents the county. Just think about that. I mean, these are thoughts.
I'm not sure what that means, Eileen. I need a little education on that.
What that means is somebody with an unexcused,
Do we start the 6 days again and again and again throughout the year? Or the 6 meetings, I'm sorry?
yes, from one absence to the next. I mean, if 6 meetings are attended, if there are 6 meetings and that counselor is there for all of those meetings or half of those meetings, yeah, I don't, you're right. How count that?
So this is going to be a drafting challenge, obviously, but
Yeah.
not something beyond our means. And, the language between consecutive and cumulative meetings, there should be an area that addresses the number of unexcused absences where someone just doesn't show up. I think that's low-hanging fruit, and that's what we're really trying to get at. So I think we've identified most of the need, as well as the issues surrounding this. I would ask that maybe we need to move on but ask that Lindsay take a stab at capturing what we're hoping to achieve. And then the legal issue is what needs to be in a charter amendment and what can we do just as our own internal rules, like we were just discussing with Code of Conduct and Ethics. What can we do just with our own self-policing rules?
And then the other thing that I would like to say that should be added in the meetings section, under, 10, under meetings on page 5. Once we do have this language, when we note who, it should be noted on the meeting minutes, who was
Yes.
there, who was in attendance, who was absent and excused or unexcused. And
Yes.
so that we have to create that unexcused record, but we also have to create the rules, which makes it unexcused. So, we have some work to do, but once we do that, I would like that added to the minutes. So it's very evident for, for the people who elect that, for the constituents of that particular, of all the counselors. basically, but just to see, what we want to know the votes by name, who voted which way, and then as well as whether they had an excused or unexcused absence.
Could we have this on our agenda next week, do you think?
Lindsay, can you work on this so we can have something to look at?
Yeah, the question is really how much time. I mean, I would be able to get something to you by the end of the week if that's enough time for you to take a look at before, because we would need to put it out to the public usually Monday afternoon. So if that's enough time for you to be ready to say we're ready to put it out there, then yeah, we can do it next week.
That'd be great, I think.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Yeah. It's good. Okay, well then shall we, I think that probably concludes the rules and procedures. We got some things to go forward with then to look at, and so we'll move on. Excuse me, I'm trying to organize that stuff here. We'll go on then to the bridge replacement resolution. Do we have the draft of that one that we can?
So staff is pulling up the draft. I know Lindsay has sent
Okay.
this to the council for your review, and I don't believe she's received any suggested edits from the council. So we just want to put this in front of you to see if you have any suggested changes and if you want to move forward with it.
That's correct. I did not receive anything.
And of course, if you need more time, we can move it to next week as well. We just didn't want this to go longer.
Yeah. Oops. What's your pleasure, council?
I would kind of like to move it to next week, if that sounds okay with everyone.
It sounds okay with me because I haven't looked at it very closely. I think we do have, don't we have something though, with regard, it isn't really the bridge replacement resolution. However, I think JPAC is meeting, is it
Yes.
next week or
It's this week.
this week?
They're meeting on Thursday of this week, and they're going to be considering the tolls and a recommendation on that. Although I'm not sure if they call it tolls, they may call it just congestion pricing. I'm not sure which terminology they're using, but whichever, I'm referring to one and the same. And our representative to JPAC is Temple Lentz. And to be consistent with the bridge replacement discussion that we had previously, I would really like to see her vote no on behalf of Clark County on congestion pricing or tolls, for a couple of reasons. I could make that as a motion if that would be appropriate.
I think it should be a motion.
Okay, I move that we direct Temple Lentz, our representative on JPAC, to vote no on behalf of Clark County on congestion pricing or tolls.
So Madam Chair, I will second, but I want to add some discussion as I make the second. So first of all, I'm in favor very much of moving this resolution along. And I haven't gotten into the great detail that I appreciate. It's been put up, and we did just come back from basically some time off. So I would too like to move that down the road at least another week so I can more fully digest. We need to make a public statement as a government entity on behalf of Southwest Washington, Clark County. We have a voice. We should exercise it. I've been asking for this for ever since I've been a counselor here. So I am so appreciative that we are considering doing this. I don't know what legal authority we can tell a counselor to vote one way or another as our representative on a committee. But nevertheless, I'm going to second this motion because I want to make make it clear, if we have the 3 votes against tolling, it's an equity issue for those in Southwest Washington who are going to be paying the bulk of those tolls, however it's couched in terminology. This congestion management, I think, is a misnomer to some extent. But I think we should also publicly state that we are against the tolling option right now because it's unequitable. We will, as Southwest Washington people, we will have to pay the extreme burden of those tolls as it's presently being contemplated. And I think we should come out against it. Our own Congresswoman Herrera Butler has done so. We should do so. So I second this motion. I'm hoping that we have 3 votes, and I'm hoping that Councilor Lentz will abide by the council's direction. And if she wants to vote one way, she needs to represent it as her personal vote, not on behalf of the Clark County Council, as she represents us on that committee.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded, and now I'm going to open it up for discussion, and I will start the discussion by saying I did serve on the tolling committee, which was originally set up, toll, congestion pricing, et cetera, that ODOT put together. I served on that for probably a year. We talked about it for about a year. Vancouver, the mayor was also on that committee, but we were the only 2 Washingtonians. I did vote no on tolling. I was definitely in the minority, but when I was asked to serve on that committee, the chair at that time was against tolling, but he did not want to serve on the committee. And so I served in place of him on that committee. So I would just say this JPACT, I would certainly think that we as the council can advise the person who is representing us on that pact to vote a certain way because she's representing us. I don't know if there's any comment on that by legal, but I think that this motion, we should ask her to vote because she's representing Clark County, that we would ask that she vote that particular way when she serves on this committee. So that would be my position, that we do have the ability to ask her to do it on this particular thing. It's a very important position, since there are only a couple of Washingtonians that are even on this JPAC. Mm-hmm. So I think that our vote should have a little bit of weight from all of the councilors.
So I don't know if Taylor needs more time to research that issue, but regardless of the outcome of that legal research, I would want to have this vote and show our consensus as a council to inform our representative of what the county council's position is.
By way of discussion, Chair, I'd like to add in something that I was involved in yesterday with a meeting that was on the Oregon tolling program. And the presentation was by Lucinda Broussard, who is the one more or less overseeing the tolling on the 205 and I-5. And this is Oregon tolling project that is different yet from the interstate bridge tolling project. So in the aggregate, I thought, well, is this it? And one of the comments that was made was, no, it probably isn't, because there are other roads that will need to be tolled in order to fully relieve the congestion that is being experienced across the river in the Rose Quarter and at the Abernathy Bridge. And the money generated from these various tolls is going to be used to relieve their problems. Well, my goodness, this raises a, the need to me to be very clear that this particular tolling really needs to have a stop put on it now until we understand what the totality is in terms of impact on our residents and our many commuters. And one of the questions I asked was, is there going to be any difference between those who just go across the bridge to do their shopping and therefore not have to pay sales tax versus those who have to go across the bridge to work for a living wage? And of course, the answer is no, there is no difference. So, and and business gets charged a higher fee because of their freight taking up more weight on the road. Well, they haven't, or how much time are they going to be given to figure what their budget is? Maybe another 6 months before the tolls are instituted, was what I was told. Well, these factors are really complicating this issue in ways that I'm very concerned that we don't know the totality and just plunge ahead piece by piece. Not good, not good.
If I may jump in just to answer Councillor Medvedji's question, the cleanest way, if you wanted to, direct in terms of a vote, you don't. Councillor Lenz, as the council appointed person to JPAC, will go as the representative of the Clark County Council and cast her vote at JPAC. You have the ability to change who the person is serving on JPAC. The council gets to make the determination who's the appointed person to serve on JPAC. So that's an option to look at who is the appointed person there. Another alternative is to pass a resolution that would then be transmitted to JPAC to say, this is the purview or the statement of the majority of the Clark County Council related to this issue. JPAC is, of course, not binding. It goes as a binding determination that's a recommendation to Metro. And then Oregon Metro makes their determinations that they will. But binding her vote at JPAC, that's something that's not as solid as one of the other options.
But we're talking about something that occurs on Thursday. How would you suggest going about it for a vote on Thursday?
So the council could pass a resolution today. You don't have to do it in a public hearing. You could pass a resolution today. Normally we post everything, but the question is this emergent enough that you would modify the agenda to add a resolution today that then could be transmitted to JPAC? Or alternatively, you would remove Councillor Lenz and appoint one of the three of you, and then that person would go this week to JPAC. You can also just publicly make your statements, and then we can send an email to JPAC to say, per the minutes, here is the discussion, and here's the conversation that was had, and send that information to JPAC so that they have it. You don't have to do anything.
On the other hand, we all serve as representatives on various committees. And if I were given a request by the council to vote a certain way, I'd consider it, wouldn't you? I would think that any councilor would.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would say maybe we advise her.
Yeah, so
Madam
Chair,
it's advice. Go ahead.
I want to keep this simple. I don't think we need a resolution, amend the agenda, do all that, or even replace the representative. I personally have never discussed this with Councillor Lenz, so I don't even know what her personal feelings are. Let's just take a vote and tell her what it is. We can send it over to JPAC independently as part of our minutes. But I'm assuming she will abide by our vote. I'd like to be optimistic that she would respect that.
I too. So I'll call for the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. moving on to 1.4, council offices.
So, Madam Chair, I just got a call and it pertains to family business. There's a meeting going on. I need to participate in it. So I would like to absent myself. I can't do both. And
Okay.
it's really important that I participate in this other meeting
All right.
it's my daughter. Okay,
Okay. All right. Okay. You're
thank
excused.
you.
So what that means is we do not have a quorum. So we can go ahead and continue to discuss.
Madam Chair, I don't want to I didn't think of the quorum. What I will do is stop the video, but continue to listen, if that's okay, as I listen to this other meeting. So you still have a quorum.
Chair, may I make a suggestion?
I'm sorry, Taylor.
Chair, may I make a suggestion? I'm not sure what the time frame for this call is. Councilor Medvedev, but we could take a short recess, potentially.
No, it's
Sorry.
much longer than that. Sorry.
Okay, so let's do that then. You just remove yourself from the video and listen so that we can hear about the council offices. And then there will be something with regard to the city council battleground letter. So
Counselors, so for the offices, we don't necessarily need to make a decision today. I did want to let you know that the office construction for the 2 new offices is done. The permits have been done and closed. As a reminder, I know I mentioned this, I think last time, the last office is about 8 inches narrower. So the next steps, which again is not time sensitive today, we can move this to next week, is just determining who's going to go in what office. And for those who will be moving, mostly Councilor Mevaji and Councilor Lentz from the other offices, if there's particular furniture that they don't want moved into an office, we can coordinate that. But we can certainly have that discussion next week. It's not urgent.
yeah, okay. And I think just to be thinking about this, one of the suggestions was that we actually set these offices up. So either, the council chair, office number 1, and then by district down the hall. So be thinking about that, and it could be the reverse too. It could be, district 1 down and chair at the end. Either way, be thinking about that, or not moving anybody at all. So we can talk about that, think about that, and talk about that for our next meeting then. And thank you, Kathleen, for getting all the information in order to actually create 2 more offices.
Yeah.
That it was an urban legend that it was going to cost $250,000, and obviously there was just some pushback about not wanting to create those 2 other offices. So
I'd like to suggest, if I may, that the current chair decide which of the offices she believes would be most appropriate for the chair. And we start with that and then go from there.
honestly, I believe the most appropriate office for the chair is the closest one to the staff and the county manager. That is
And which one is that?
that would be the one, the first office of counselors, right? Just beyond Kristen's office. And
One of the old offices.
yes, one of the
Yeah.
old offices. Yes.
If you think that's most appropriate, I think that should be a given, and then we
Yeah.
just go from there.
I guess the question that will come up is if this charter amendment passes, that
Yeah.
means there will be a shuffling of offices, and that is not exactly the best scenario. So, and maybe, I don't know, I mean, maybe we should think about, well, just think about it. We might want to wait until after November to decide if offices should be moved. That might be a better way to do it, because if the council is good, if they're going to create a whole new district, and then the council's going to choose their chair themselves, it's a whole different scenario than what it is right now. So
Yeah.
I've said my preference for as the charter reads right now. Otherwise, it creates a real problem with shuffling offices. And we don't want to do that. It creates holes in the walls for all those things that are posted or that are, nailed into the wall. So that said, I guess we'll discuss this at another meeting, but so just think about that. Moving on to new business, we have a letter from the City of Battleground where they were unable through their meetings. Do you want to present this, Kathleen?
Yeah, I can certainly do that if you'd like. So they have a vacancy on their council. Mike D'Alessandro vacated his seat in June. And per the RCW, the remaining council members had 90 days to appoint a qualified person to fill the vacancy. Their deadline was September 6th. The City of Battleground Council has been unable to come up to a consensus on a qualified applicant. And then now per RCW, that appointment falls to the county council. The Battleground mayor who sent the letter did state in his request to consider not appointing anybody as the elections are in November. But it is certainly under the council's purview by RCW if you want to move forward to appoint their vacated position or to let that position remain open until the November election.
My desire would be to make that replacement. I think we would be able to do that. My question is, would we use the same names that came forward to the Battleground City Council as our template? Because if we can't, it really is a time issue. There's the issue of the time to do this replacement. But if we can use those same names, I'm all for just doing it as soon as possible so that seat is filled and doesn't sit vacant until January. The election's in November, but the term goes to January. So they're still missing all of November and December. So I think that we should do it, but it's our duty and we should do it. Is there a consensus that we would take this up? Well, first, is there an answer? Taylor, do you know the answer to that? Can we, or
Sure.
Kath, or anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
Chair, I got this question today, but I'm not aware of any requirement that the council go through any particular process to identify the qualified individual. So using the names that were provided before seems like an option.
Okay, great. So I would be in favor of that. Councilor Bowerman, how about yourself?
Yes.
Okay, and Gary, I don't know if you can hear us. I believe so Gary, let me text him in the meantime. Maybe
there he is.
He's okay. All right, good. Thank you. Okay, so we will address this. Perhaps what we need to do, maybe you can talk, Kathleen, to the manager there and get those names and their their resumes, etc. Whatever the packet that was available to the council to us as soon as possible. And then would we be able to do that on Tuesday? I mean, is that too soon? Next Tuesday? Or do we do that how would we do that? Do we need to, no, we'd need to actually interview them. Is that it? Or?
I would recommend doing interviews of at least a couple of them, but I can certainly get the information from the City of Battleground and get that sent over to you. You do have your council meeting next Tuesday is in the evening, so I can work with Kristen. If you want to do interviews that afternoon, we can do a special meeting notice if it works for your calendars.
That would be good.
I think so too. If, I need to look at my calendar too, since it's an evening meeting. Hang on.
And I did terminate that other call, so I'm fully with you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The only
Gary.
addition, I know I gave you a thumbs up, but the only additional comment is I just want to move as quickly and expeditiously as we can within the scheduling constraints that each of us has.
Okay, so if our calendars are clear for that Tuesday morning, let's see about putting those interviews then, if at all possible. Thank you. And then,
Yeah, if Tuesday morning for some reason doesn't work, we can look on Monday because that's mostly one-on-ones.
oh, all right.
So I'm,
Okay.
of course, can be flexible with all of you. So we'll confirm with you by end of the week what day and time it'll be.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay. Counselor reports. Did we actually, was there anything else that we, Counselor Bowerman, was there something you wanted to add to new business or with regard to,
Yes, and I would like us to send a memorandum perhaps, or whatever is appropriate, to Kathleen and staff regarding the status of a couple of things. And maybe it would lead to a work session, maybe not. Number one would be the status of aggregate in the county and the additional permitting for that. We had a work session on it a while back, but I've lost track of what the status is on that. And the second thing is, how about the vacant buildable lands model report that is due maybe this month, but for sure this year, out of our county? What do we have a draft of that is available for council to look at, or what is the status of that? So anyway, I just I'd like us to go on the record that we need to hear about these things.
Well, and Madam Chair, I do have a council report, but I would like us to revisit all of our surface mining overlay. And I mean, we had talked about that at an earlier time. There seemed to be a huge disconnect when that overlay was put in place from what the task force recommended and what they projected for the county. And then all of a sudden, all of it was gone. And we necked down to what we have existing today, and it's getting closed. And, I know there's a tendency for the industry to, I'm not going to say cry wolf, but maybe overstate the shortage of aggregate, but I believe there is, and we need to look to the future. So I'd like to do more than a memorandum as far as that goes, but that's a great starting point. Karen, I think we need to revisit that overlay and say, because we don't have strategic material in place. If we're going to rebuild the I-5 bridge or another tunnel, I want Clark County providing that rock. And, we're running low.
This just jogs my memory and actually frustrates me just a little bit, because we did ask that the surface mining overlay be revisited at the time that we had this aggregate work session. So I think that we should request a work session for the existing overlay, what the overlay was in 2012, or the last time it was visited, the last time it was dispensed with, so that we can make a decision about a surface mining overlay, moving forward with surface mining overlay. Now, the planning commission, the planning commission will address it, but if we have a work session, or we would even like to ask at this point that it's put on the agenda for the planning commission. I don't know, maybe that's what we need rather than another work session. We could just request that our community planning put this on the planning commission agenda to address it before the end of this year. We need to get it done. We asked for this months ago, and I haven't seen any action on it. So I actually have, some of these things fall through the cracks. And until you bring it up again, we're just sort of making pontificating remarks months earlier that nothing ever happened. So what would your pleasure? Shall we ask that community planning put forward to the planning commission the surface mining overlay as it was, and maybe put it back into place? What is your pleasure there?
My pleasure is that we take the action that is going to be the fastest for getting something through. And the reason is that our community is getting very antsy as to why there isn't any progress being made. They're increasingly having to go to Oregon and other counties, which adds to transportation cost, ultimately to the cost of housing in Clark County in order to get the aggregate to do their job. So what is the fastest approach? And I don't know if there are applications in process that haven't been dealt with by our staff at this point. I just don't know the status, and I'd like to know that right away and make sure that we take fast action.
So I did ask staff that specific question. They're still digging in to make sure they're not missing anything, but there are currently 4 in various stages of the permitting process, 4 applications. So they're getting some additional information on them for me, and I can certainly share that with you.
So Kathleen, what would be the fastest way to have those 4 applications dealt with? What can we do as a council to help push this along?
Well, I want to make sure that they're doing a process that's consistent with everybody. So I need to get more detail on where they're at with the process. I have not heard that anything's being held up. So once I get more information from the manager, then we can look at, where we're at and what needs to happen. But I do want to be mindful of, I want to be equitable of how things have been put forward and if it's the right process, and not, because that gets us into some trouble sometimes if we start picking certain ones and moving them differently. So, but let me get all the information, and then I will propose through staff a way to get these through the most efficient way.
Okay, thank you. I brought this up to Kathleen in one-on-ones on Monday, and I think that you could pick up on my feeling of the need for action. And I thank you for that, because we've got to attend to this kind of thing, or you're right, it just tends to languish for months on end without follow-up, it seems.
And I'm sorry, just one second. I agree that we do need to go through an equitable process and not try to step into the muck. However, I would like to know I'd like to see who is what and what is going on, because as I recall, there was some action almost 2 years ago about a 10-acre overburden issue that in my view and my recollection, there should not have been a need for any conditional use permit, that the council had done their work at that hearing. Mark Bolt was still the chair at that time. So it's more than, it's over 2 years. So, or just under 2 years, whatever. But I understand that's in a process that shouldn't actually be going on. So I would like to know that, and we can talk about this offline or whatever, Kathleen. But that seems very strange to me that nothing has happened there, or that there is a conditional use process going on that I didn't believe was going to be one of the steps forward. So,
Madam Chair, I'd like to separate what we're
okay.
talking about right now and what Kathleen's doing. And so I want to double tap. I don't want to do anything outside of any normal processes. So that's the short term. Let's move those permits through and in a pragmatic deliberate way according to law. I think we should have a work session or a presentation by community development. You know, we know, the state knows, they've got it mapped where the resource land is. And I'm just really focusing on aggregate right now and surface mining. We know from the prior work that was done, all of the mines that, or surface mining that was to be closed, that which was to be opened, that which was to be enlarged. And then when the vote came, that was all changed as far as what was recommended. You know, that's history. So I think we need an update on, okay, what are our reserves? Do we have a 5-year supply? Do we have a 20-year supply? What happened to all those enlargements that weren't approved, you know, by the state's map of where the resources are? I think we need kind of a, okay, where are we right now? Do we need to adjust the surface mining map and get that process moving? Because it is a long process. And I think we're behind.
And I would agree with that. I think that, you know, there are other counselors on the council since the last time it was even addressed. I was on the planning commission when it was first addressed. So, and we were in session until midnight 2 times in discussing it. So it's kind of it's a process that has a lot of community input. But I think if there could be a presentation by community planning, what exists now, what existed before, and what we can do to, as well as the supply in our county, what is it? What is the state? What's the state law? Our land use management law dictates that we note what is resource land in our county. That's just as much our land use. It's just as much a part of our land use responsibility as anything else. So we need to get it right. So I think we should have I do think we should have a work session expeditiously because I know it does need to go through the planning commission. That is the process. It will have to go through the planning commission in order to get a recommendation from them if we were to expand the surface mining overlay. Okay, expand or even put it back to where it was in 2013, 14, whatever it was. So let's talk with the community planning about, and if they need to be more clear about what it is we want, we can have that conversation with them. But let's get that on the schedule as quickly as we can.
And then also the report from Kathleen on those 4 pending applications.
And may I I'll try to be brief, Counselor report. I know we're going long as well. So
I'm sorry, Gary, there was one other part that I had mentioned. I'm sorry to interrupt. And that is the vacant buildable lands model report, needing a draft that we as a county are going to be sending forward. We don't know the status of that, haven't seen a draft. It seems like it would be due by now. I'd like to have an update on that.
Right. That too goes to the planning commission, but I think we need to see a draft before it goes to the planning commission if it has not already gone. So that should be on our next council time, if not before. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. And by the way, I heard, my reason for bringing that up is that I heard from the community that staff was going to delay that until the comp plan. And if that is not true, then we need to be talking about it and getting it out in the public domain as to what actually is occurring.
That is completely against what we said we wanted. So yes, I need to hear about this. Thank you.
And I can say there's been no discussion that I'm aware of with staff doing that. They were working on this report and moving forward as planned, because I think that a resolution needs to come back to the council before it's even sent to Commerce. So, but I have a conversation scheduled this afternoon with Oliver, so I can follow up with him this afternoon.
That's terrific, because that'll be what gets it out in the public domain and puts to rest those kinds of comments if they're not true.
Okay, now, council report.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. So we had a joint meeting between Vancouver and the county on our homeless. I just want to hit some of the highlights that came out of that meeting. First, we welcomed a new city representative from Battleground on the committee. We're in the process of filling the other vacancies that will be filled by those with lived experience. So we have interviews coming up, and we're going to interview everyone that put it in an application. The city is stating there is a need right now for the RV car parking, safe parking program that they have been carrying the burden on for quite some time, from the mall to the C-Tran facility. It's been operating well, but they and the local police department, Vancouver Police Department, also indicated if there was another park right now that had the capacity of about 55 RVs, there still would probably be some need, but there's an immediate need. So I don't know. It's a really tough subject, but I think we need to discuss that, look into it, see if the county is in a position as a temporary additional solution until we can spend that $15 million we just allocated to help eliminate homelessness. I think this is a current need that the county should consider looking at, as disagreeable as that may be. I think we do have some locations that may be appropriate. They're still in the process on a related topic of hiring an operator through a nonprofit to run their supported encampments that they still don't have a specific timeline on. Again, I don't want to get involved in that as a county, other than in the services that we're providing to make that stay in an encampment as temporary as possible. At that meeting, we, I had asked for, and it wasn't communicated, I guess, well enough to the PA's office and the city attorney's office, that we needed an update on the law and pending cases. And Lindsay's well aware of this from the Ninth Circuit, that really informs us of what we must do in order to be able to apply the law, the normal law of no camping, having people in hazardous places, unhealthy places. We need to be able to enforce the law. So we didn't have that briefing because they needed more time to prepare it. I have also asked for the exact same briefing, for all intents and purposes, at the Law and Justice Committee, because it's a starting point for eliminating encampments. We need to have legal, lawful, defensible program in place for storing property, for moving people, for basically evicting them from places they shouldn't be. Related to that, I had volunteered Lindsay to help Kate Budd. She was going to put together an SOP on how all of the contributors providing services would work together to better coordinate in addressing these encampments, to eliminate them, not to support them, but all the things that come into play. And there was a stated need by Vancouver that, there's a lack of coordination right now. It's really just by happenstance that it's occurring, especially on those WSDOT rights of way, when they close them down and eliminate encampments. We've been fortunate in some of that activity that we've had good coordination, but it's only happened by accident. So Kate Budd's working on that to present to all the providers of resources. So I think, Karen, do you have anything to add as a highlight from that meeting?
No, good summary.
Thank you, Chair. That's all I have.
Okay. Other councilor reports? I'll just say briefly that I had the opportunity to speak at the 9/11 20th anniversary commemoration. It was a very nice, a very nice commemoration, and I was appreciative of, you know, being invited to that in spite of having to hobble up to the stage with my big old boot. But anyway, that said, it was really great. And so I don't know if it was televised and if you can see it again, but I think it would be really nice. If you haven't seen it, if you weren't able to see it, and if it was televised, it'd be something to watch. So that's my report. On to work sessions.
There's one request today, and I know Kevin Tyler's on as well if there's questions, but this is from Public Works Parks and Lands Division. It's to provide an overview of the update to the conservation areas acquisition plan and review the Parks Advisory Board recommendations regarding potential new conservation future projects and priority ranking. Their desired result of this work session is to get council to provide guidance to staff on any desired changes to the plan and potential project lists, and so that they can then schedule a public hearing to consider adoption of the plan and project list. This would be for 1 hour in late October.
Any objection? Nope. Okay. So then we just mentioned another one, surface mining overlay work session, so you can let community planning know about our desire to hear that. Okay, so Lindsay, anything on our policy issues?
Thing today.
Okay, I guess we have an executive session for 20 minutes on pending litigation. Our attorney will be present. Will there be action afterward, Taylor?
There will not be action afterwards today.
Okay. All right. So we will adjourn council time, and I'll see you on the other side for our whatchamacallit, our pending litigation, sorry, executive session. Thank you.